Hey, how's it going everyone? Justin again, as always. Thanks for watching my channel. Welcome back. So I know that some of you are probably curious to know what had happened with the Dodge Dakota, what was causing the multiple injector codes, misfire code, the TPS code, and the air intake code. And you're probably wondering if I actually got a chance to get back at it today. So I did, and I actually left the house really early this morning to get to work early enough to actually do just a simple test, because something kind of kept ringing in my ear, which was that the engine was replaced about 2 years back, maybe closer to 3 years. I think it was done in like the later portion of 2016. So I was like, you know what? These things, like the similar to the 3.7, had valve train issues with the overhead cam and everything. Let's just do a compression test and see what happens. We'll go for the cylinder that has not only the misfire code, the P0305, but also the P0205, and we'll just see what we find, and if we see something that strikes us as odd, we'll jump to the next step. So let's take a look and see what kind of compression we got out of cylinder number 5. Alright, so we're gonna do a clear flood compression test of cylinder number 5. Go ahead. Stop. Absolutely no compression whatsoever. Alright, so with the compression tester hooked up, having another person in the car putting us in a clear flood mode, so putting the gas pedal all the way to the ground, that cuts off the fuel going into the cylinder, had him crank it, got nothing. Absolutely 0 PSI as far as compression. Now we need to go to a known good cylinder, or one that didn't have any issues. Now all the back cylinders had issues. If I remember correctly, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all 4 rear cylinders had misfire counters just flying off the charts. Even though we didn't have a misfire for every single one of them, and even though we didn't have injector codes for every single one of those cylinders, it was just kind of funny that the whole back half of the engine is what was misfiring. So now let's take a look at a known good cylinder. So we'll jump to cylinder number 1. Let's take a look. Alright, I'm gonna try number 1. Yeah, but the charger boost is on. Yep. Okay. Alright guys, so sometimes in diagnostic troubleshooting, like I said in the first half, this first part of this video, which was part 1, you gotta pick a path and go with it. Now yesterday, since there were multiple codes, I just picked the path and I went after the TPS first. I should have gone after the misfire first. Pulling a plug, looking at a plug, doing a compression test, doing a wet compression test, and then if absolutely needed, we could have done a leak down test of that cylinder, and I could have got all that information right out the gate, and we could have just cut the rest of this stuff out. But I think there's more than just a misfiring issue with this vehicle. As I said, there was a couple of connectors that appeared to be ground connectors that had no part of the harness going to it whatsoever. So I don't know if that is a separate harness, if those were supposed to go to the body somewhere. The radio interference wire wasn't hooked up. Like I said, there was an issue with the TPS. It was giving us a high voltage code, but the open and close would show us that we weren't quite meeting full, like 90% voltage on the signal side, and we had about 0.2 to 0.3 volts more than a 5 volt ref on the actual signal wire. So multiple issues. I actually also did a fuel pressure test, and I was gonna check the injectors, but once we found out that the engine was toast, needless to say, there was really no point in going any further. But I did throw a fuel pressure gauge on there just to check, and I tell you what, when you cycled the key on, it just fell. So did the fuel pump take out 2 injectors? Were the injectors already gone and washed out the cylinders and the compression rings, causing a complete dead cylinder? With having a dead miss in number 5 and having absolutely no compression, this engine is toast. So at this point in time, unless the customer's wanting to put a new engine or a rebuilt engine in this thing, we could pretty much wrap it up with this. If they do decide to do the engine and replace it, we're going to have to let them know, or at least make some annotations, that there were some other things that were also occurring or that were happening and let them know of all the different codes that we have. We need to put all that information in the documentation system to make sure that it's all documented, to keep our I's dotted and our T's crossed, because we don't want something to come back on us after we put a replacement engine in or something like that, and then we still have codes for those things. So like I said, it could still have bad injectors. The spark plugs were pretty much done. It wore the electrodes completely out. We had huge gaps. It appears the fuel pump is probably shot as well, because like I said, I put the fuel pressure gauge on there. It fell to absolute zero. So lots of things going on with this thing. And then of course we still have some grounding issues and problems with the throttle body. So we didn't even address the air intake either. But at this point, you know, the most expensive repair is going to need to be addressed first, and we need to see if the customer wants to proceed. More times than not, from what I've seen with vehicles of this age, now this thing is a 2000, so it's about 19 years old. Most customers do not want to spend, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 grand on a truck this old. If they're going to spend that much, they're just going to sell it, let it be somebody else's problem. Maybe somebody out there really wants a Dodge Dakota this year for some reason or another, and they just don't want it anymore, so they'll usually just dump it for something cheap and ridiculous on Craigslist, and they'll go buy something else with whatever they get. That's usually what I see with cars like this that come in with multiple problems, including a major problem. So alright guys, well that'll pretty much wrap it up for today's video. If you enjoyed today's content, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. You never know what's going to come up on this channel. I do have an engine stab that I'm doing with that 4-liter on Saturday. If you guys are interested in seeing that, let me know, and I'll try to do my best to take a camera with me and film some of the process. That's all I got for this video, guys. Thanks as always for watching. We'll see you next time. Deuces.